Okay. All right. So we've got 7 bills on the agenda. We can be here as long or as short as y'all want. But I think we have some good legislation before you, some bills before you. So I'm going to start off with number 1, Senate Bill 2680. Call that up. Is Senator Younger here? Okay. All right. This is Senator Younger's bill. It's supported by Farm Bureau and the Secretary of State. All it does is extend the length of agricultural leases on 16 land from 5 to 10 years to allow those farmers who work the agricultural land, those who invest in fertilizer and work in the dirt, to help them have a better chance at making a profit. And so that's what the bill does. I'm glad to yield for any questions. Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Current law is that it's 5 years, and then if they meet certain requirements for improvements to the land, that they can be approved for another 5 years. Is this just taking out the requirement that they make investments in the land and
That's
they just go to a straight 10 years?
That's my understanding, Senator Hobson.
Is there any requirement in here that they commit to making certain improvements to the land? Examples would be putting down lime or doing drainage ditches or fertilizer or things that it might improve the soil, or do you know?
I don't believe there's anything of that nature in there. However, if you're going to be someone that's in this type of industry, you're going to make sure that is done, in my experience.
Well,
council does inform me and remind me, it does require that they use best farm practices and so forth. So and that would include putting down furniture, fertilizer, lime, et cetera, as necessary.
So would it be fair to say that the requirements that are in place now for them to get the 5-year extension could be put into the lease, and it's generally required by the revisions here to make the lessee improve the land to some degree?
That's correct. I don't see any prohibition of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boyd.
Am I correct in saying that?
I can't hear you, Senator Boyd.
I'm sorry. Is it correct to say that being able to offer a 10-year lease makes the property more valuable for a lease? Like, how is this going to generate more revenue for the school district by doing a 10-year lease?
If the farmer who works the land follows the best practices, I believe so. I mean, you can never predict the weather and things of that nature, but essentially it should allow for a greater profit for the farmer.
Okay, I'm not interested in the farmer, sorry. For the school, because these are 16 section trust lands. And so my question for this is has the Secretary of State or whoever's presenting this, have they said that this would make these properties more valuable and they can get increased lease amounts for these properties?
They can create the leases whatever they want. And so if they want to, they can draft a lease that says it's fair market value, whatever that fair market value is at the time of the lease. They can, if it's after 10 years, the land is improved and they can increase the amount in the lease. That's my understanding. Is Rob Pillow, you from Secretary of State's office here? If you're going to make a statement, come up here to the podium. That way, if you have anything further you want to add to Senator Boyd, come up here and speak into the microphone for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. The first time I've been called in front of the committee. We've got the Assistant Secretary of State Overlands here. He may be better able to speak on this than me. If it would be okay.
Okay. If
Bill Cheney.
Mr. Cheney, come on up, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry.
So if I made any statements earlier to questioning for Senator Hobson or Boyd, please go ahead and correct me. Make sure we're doing this and passing. I'm giving proper information.
Well, to start with, the farmers are saying that they need 10 years and to develop the land better, which then will increase the rents, because we've got three different situations. We've got the Delta farmers, you got your truck farmers, and you got your cattle, because in 16th sections, it's all lumped together. But if they are allowed to have longer period of time to depreciate the lime, the fertilizer, one, you're going to get a better quality lessee. So even if the rents don't go up, but if school administrative costs goes down to keeping people to pay their rent and their taxes, you're still ahead. But by improving the land, they're going to bid a little higher because their numbers are going to work. And Senator Hobson, the 10 years, the new version says that you're going to put best practices in the lease so that if somebody does have it for 10 years, a lease term might be you're going to lime every 3 years. We're going to work with AFS, all the other groups, to put in best practices depending on the region, but you'll still have the option to try to get an extension, but this is to give the 10 years for just farming cost. You can't do it in 5 years.
So to make sure you're answering Senator Boyd's question, so is this going to increase the value of the land, therefore allowing the school district to realize increased profit?
That is the goal.
That is the goal. Okay. Senator Boyd, do you have any follow-up for Mr. Cheney? Thank you. Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One follow-up question on the point that Mr. Cheney was making on the best practices. Can we expect then that there will be something from the Secretary of State's office to let us know or let the school districts know what they are? Because those could change over time, but something that where they're regularly updated.
Yes, sir. That's why we have it this way, because best practices change. 4 years ago, best practices would have been you have to put in a well. Now some of that's different. We might get new data from the Extension Service that says lime every 5 years, not 3. We're trying to tailor it to the region, the lease, and the crop at the moment, or the grazing rights.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hobson.
Mr.
Any
Chairman.
further questions for Mr. Cheney? Any further discussion on the bill? Senator Blunt? Okay, you heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Let me jump down to number 7. I see Senator Johnson here. Let's go ahead and bring that up. That is a bill that came out of technology. I think it's Senator Johnson's legislation. So Senator, if you go ahead and explain 2062, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a committee sub for 2062. And what the bill does is it sets up a task force to for K-12 education to give guidance on how to implement AI in schools across our state. It seems that we have diverse opinions about AI. Some people have a fear of AI and some people are all in favor of it. This is to try to give guidance on how to implement it in the best way for K-12. We know that kids are using it. We want to do it in the best way possible for them. And that's an explanation of the bill.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Any questions for Senator Johnson? Okay. Do I hear a motion? Senator Blunt? It's committee sub. Motion is titled sufficient due pass. Committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Johnson, welcome back to the committee. You're welcome to hang out with us anytime. Thank you. Let's jump back up to number 2, Senate Bill 2681. And I'm gonna recognize Senator England, if you come up to the podium and explain that legislation.
Thank you, Senator DeBar, Chairman DeBar. And thank you to my friends in the Education Committee. I know I'm not a member of the committee, but I appreciate you allowing me to be here today to present this great bill. Before I start going over the bill, I want to share with you why we're here, because I know it's late, and I think this is a bill that we can be proud of if we pass it out of committee today. I want to let you know that right now, at least 50% of your NASA scientists are dyslexic. But I also want to share with you that studies have shown that as many as 50% of individuals in prison are also dyslexic. And that's pretty eye-opening, I think, when you think of what dyslexia is and that we have a way to remediate it. And if we don't remediate it, a lot of times these children in early education in second and third grade are getting left behind, and they're falling into such a rut that we have these high IQ individuals. Dyslexic individuals are usually high IQ individuals, end up in our prison system. So we have a chance here to do something, I think, in the state of Mississippi that will have long-term lasting effects in Mississippi, where we can maybe one day see some of our corrections appropriations not be needed and move those into other areas in education. I really feel like we can do that if we can address dyslexia in this state. That being said, let me jump into what this bill does. And I do appreciate the many members that signed on as co-authors of this bill. And I do expect an amendment to the bill, and I'm not a committee member, so Senator Delano may be asking the chairman to be recognized for that. If you'll follow along with me in section 1, lines 56 to 59 defines what an AA license is in Mississippi. This is a license, this is pulled directly from the licensure statute. It's a certification issued by the Department of Educators who hold a master's degree. Line 60 to 80 defines qualified instructor or certified academic language therapist. So if you've heard CALT, C-A-L-T, that's what that means. It's a professional certified through a nationally recognized program, Orton Gillingham, which is an instructional approach to a dyslexia program or academic language therapy organization. That person also has experience in Orton Gillingham based dyslexia therapy situations, including remediating students in groups smaller than 6, has 1,400 hours of clinical therapy or more, minimum of 2 curriculum therapy cycles, trained in 2 Orton Gillingham dyslexia therapy programs, assisted in training educators through an Orton Gillingham-based dyslexia program under a qualified instructor of CALT, and a master's degree or higher. So that is what we mean by qualified instructor of certified academic language therapist. Lines 81 to 104 defines a dyslexia therapist. There are several means by which you can be a dyslexic therapist, and I'm going to a dyslexia therapist, and I'm going to outline those for you here. One, that individual has completed training in a department-approved Orton Gillingham-based dyslexia therapy training program and attained an AA license in dyslexia therapy, are holding or currently participating in a master's degree program or having completed an Orton Gillingham-based dyslexia training program, or holding a standard license or admin license and a master's degree, having completed a Orton Gillingham-based dyslexia training program. And I want to keep you in mind that we're going to maybe have an amendment here in a moment, or holding a national certification for Orton Gillingham-based dyslexia therapy, master's degree or higher, and currently membership in a national certifying organization for Orton Gillingham-based dyslexia therapy. Finally, lines 105 to 115 defines approved dyslexia therapy training program as a program accredited by the International Multisensory Structured Language Educational Council, and it includes 200 hours of coursework, 700 hours of clinical work, and a reading science competency examination administered by a nationally recognized organization. Why is that important? Because this is going to help us get more dyslexia therapists into our schools in Mississippi, into our public schools where we already require screening. This is going to allow us to help those students. And I can tell you that I've talked with parents who have had students who meet with a dyslexia therapist. They have this issue remediated, and they go right back into our public, they're already in our public schools. This student went back into our public schools and is excelling now that they've been taught how to read and had their language and reading issue remediated. Again, I think we have a chance to do something very important. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that the questions may be better after a committee member makes a proposed amendment, but I will be here to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator England. Any questions for Senator England, or any comments? No amendment. Okay. Senator Polk.
Thank you. In the bill, it says Orton Gillingham several times. Will this in any way, there are other ways to treat dyslexic children. Are there any schools in Mississippi that this will eliminate, private or public, that maybe do not use this system?
No, Senator Polk. As a matter of fact, this just allows for those other training options, other programs to be used in Mississippi, whereas they aren't currently being used. So this will not, to my knowledge, negatively affect any current school in Mississippi. In fact, it will help not only our public schools, but even those schools that may be teaching this now by allowing them access to more trained professionals.
Thank you, Senator Pope. Thank you. Seeing no further questions. Senator Delano?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to offer this amendment. It's a couple of things that Senator England brought up, and he did. I have three different things that we need to address. The first is I need to add or in a couple of places. I'll give it to you in a second. But I want to let the committee know that Senator England did properly explain the bill with the ors in place. And I'm following through this bill. This bill, as given to us today, has a couple of different line numbers, locations, but it should be in, if I'm not mistaken, line 91. And Sam, I'm asking you for identification on this. At the end of line 91, there should be an or added. I'm doing whatever's in this packet. Which I do not have the committee sub in this packet. Okay, so now, if that is the case, okay. All right. So Sam, I've got the amendment here for you. On lines 85, 88, and 92, we need to add in the word or at the end of that line, at the end of those lines. On line 86, add the language starting at the beginning that will say holding or currently participating in a master's degree program. On line 86. And then this is kind of a conceptual thing, and I'm going to, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask you for a little bit of latitude here. We want to make sure that if there are any reciprocal licenses with other states, that the state of Mississippi acknowledges that for not just the educational component of it, but also there are some states that regulate speech pathology and dyslexia through a medical field. And we would like for the state of Mississippi to acknowledge those medical credentials that are coming from other states, such as I believe Texas does that, if I'm not mistaken. That's very important, especially in our Air Force communities where we have a lot of people who are transferred into the area. And that's something that's very big for my particular home district. Sam, you understand what I'm asking in that particular part? And then the last part would be to remove the reverse repealer at the end of the bill. That's an explanation of the amendment.
Sam, do you understand the amendments? You got them? You've heard Senator Delano's amendment. Do you have any comments, questions, or just any discussion on the amendments? We ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Well, the ayes have it.
Motion at the proper time.
Go ahead, Senator Delano.
It's how sufficient to pass committee sub.
Okay, you've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Senator England. Thank you, Senator Delano. All right. Let's move to Senate Bill 2686. And that is, this is a bill dealing, you should have a committee sub as well. That's a committee sub dealing with the ESAs, and the language in the bill comes from the peer report that was conducted in 2022. You may have probably have heard a lot about a potential wait list. And and so forth. So this seeks to address that. It's our understanding from the peer report and just from people in the field that the problem with the wait list, there really may not be a wait list, because what happens is people get they're requesting or put on a wait list before they even approve to go to a school. And so they haven't been accepted into the school. And so they're put on this wait list, and that then therefore involves a lot of money being called back and so forth, because the money's not being used because the students are not actually accepted into a school, whether the school doesn't offer the special needs that the child needs, or whether the school doesn't offer it. Sometimes the school doesn't even, as required, they don't even do the pre and post tests. They don't report out different things that they're supposed to do. And so what this committee sub does is it basically codifies and demands that if these schools that receive any of this ESA money are not following what is required of them, that they're not going to be able to get funding through that. So it also requires that a parent be approved, have that child be approved and accepted into a program before they can even apply for the ESA scholarship. So I think that's the explanation of the committee sub. Any questions by anybody? If not, do I hear a motion? Senator Blunt? Senator Boyd, you got a question? Okay, title sufficient, do pass, committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Senate Bill 2690. That deals with our charter schools. You should have a committee sub in that one as well. As you were aware, from the presentation from the depart earlier in the session, they talked about failing school districts and some of our low performing charter schools, and that charter schools made up half of the DNF rated schools. So what this really came out of our appropriations subcommittee meeting, in that the charter school really does not have any incentive to shut down or even close or even do anything, punish charter schools, because they are receiving a 3% fee from the schools. And so schools like Midtown, for example, who's been very low performing really since their existence, which should have been shut down potentially, have not, because in the committee meeting, the director stated that if they did not have that 3%, they might not be able to operate. And so what this does is it removes the 3% that they would receive, and they are going to be treated like every other agency. We're removing a diversion and therefore they will have to come before the legislature and say, this is what I need to operate, not just a straight diversion. At one point, I think they had roughly $2.8 million in their special fund off of this that were just sitting there. I think that's been spent down, but still, this will remove the 3% diversion. It will make them come before the legislature to present a budget, and then we approve what they receive. It also changes, they are receiving MAEP funds off of an ADM, and this changes it to an ADA, like the rest of the public schools throughout our state. So we're just trying to make them more equitable for every public school, because they are a public school. That's an explanation. I'll yield for any questions. There are none. Title sufficient, do pass, committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Let me jump down to 2693 and recognize Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is an attempt to focus some state efforts on schools that are just traditionally and historically underperforming. And as most of you know, right now, we have a few tools. The MD's got a few tools with those kind of districts. But one of the things that we've done in the past for achievement school districts and district transformation, that you had to have an F for 2 consecutive years, or if they were an F or D, for 2 out of 3 years, but this would also include those schools that are just historically and chronically underperforming. And if you've been a D or an F for 4 consecutive years, this would allow the state to take that district and put them into a district of transformation. It would also transfer, I think we only have 2 schools left in the old Achievement School District. It's Yazoo City and Humphreys County, and they have not done well. Let me just be if you look at their scoring, they've not done well under the Achievement School District, where there was 1 superintendent for 2 school districts. This would allow for there to be 1 superintendent for each of the 2, or any school district that's moved into this district of transformation. There are a couple of new features to this that hopefully will be helpful. One is that the new superintendent will be appointed for the period of time where previously it would have 5 years of performing C or better. In this case, there would be 3 years of C or better, but a new school board, one of the problems we've had is the transition back to a new school board and their inability to have time to understand some of the things that are done to help the district do better. So this case would be 2 years that the board would be put back in place, but would work side by side with that superintendent. Essentially, that superintendent would have almost like a veto power. It would have the board would still make the decisions with the superintendent that was placed there by MD to kind of oversee the district. And within a year before being taken over fully again by the local board, there would be, they would hire an interim superintendent that would work essentially as a deputy superintendent under that person who has been assigned by the State Department. The attempt here is to get a district better prepared to sail off on their own and do well with an understanding of some of the things that need to take place to make them successful. There are provisions in here for the State Department. If they don't have the capacity to take over a district, then they can put the school district under an improvement plan or corrective action plan. And then also there's some cleanup language in the bill, some old statutes, just outdated language that had to be fixed up. But again, the newly constituted board that would take over at the end of that period of time would basically be running it after the 3 years, or it says in here too, if the district determines prior to them getting 3 years of C grades or better, the district determines they're back in a place they can take off. The Department of Education has the authority to start that process sooner. So that's an explanation of the bill. Oh, if I didn't say it, the 2 schools that are in the Achievement School District would be transferred to the District of Transformation. They would each have their own superintendent under this proposal and hopefully get them performing better. They have not done well since they were in the Achievement School District, since they started there. So I'll yield for questions if there are any, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Senator. Any questions? Senator Bryan?
I have a rambling question that takes a bit of preface.
Will it be
So-
followed by, wouldn't you agree?
No, I'm just going to talk
Okay.
and then I'll get to the point. Is this as good a time as any, Mr. Chairman?
I can be here all night, Senator.
Well, but this is what I'm trying to say. If you'll notice, section 1 is 3717.6. And section 2 is 3717.6.1 and 3717.13 and 1370.17 are odd numbered sections, which means, of course, that 13 and 17 were there first, and then 6 came later, and now here comes 6.1. So I think, and I'm not absolutely certain about this, but I think that we had a system for conservatorship. And this District of Transformation and Achievement School District and all of that came later. And back when we first had conservatorship, that was a very radical thing to do. The state of Mississippi was taking control of the school district away from the local community. And we never done that before. Been here 200 years, hadn't done that. And the thought was that there was an urgency to turn this district back over to the local community as soon as possible. And that was the driving force. Well, of course, time passes and you learn. And as time passed, we learned that it's not a good idea to suddenly turn the school district back over to the local community, that there needs to be a transition period. And so Senator Hobson is describing, as I understand it, a way to do that under the district of Achievement School District and District of Transformation, whatever the buzzwords are. But I'm over here on on sections 37, 17, 13, because I think that language was the original language about how the state took over a school district. And it had that immediate takeover. And so, having seen the difficulty with that, I think that because what would happen is you'd get out from under conservatorship, and on day one, the old school board would be there. On day two, you'd have a new school board, and there was no continuity. So, at my request, the House and Senate, everybody came up with the language that's in subsection 3, and this is under the old system now, that at the end of the period of conservatorship, the State Board of Education would appoint a school board. They'd be there for 1 year, acting as an advisory board, and the superintendent would still run them. And then there would be a transition period where one member after another would roll off. And that was much better. Not perfect, but it was better. So now we have language that has both of these things working together, and this is where I get confused. Subsection 1, starting on line 664, subsection 1 says, when the governor declares an emergency, the State Board of Education shall abolish the school district. And so then when you get down to subsection 3, which is sort of the old law, it says after a school board is abolished, the State Board of Education does the following things and sets up the new school board, and on and on and on. And I think that there are two different options, and I think the language is getting them confused. I'm not sure that literally we want to abolish a school district. It would seem to me that maybe the district of transition or whatever would be operating the district, but I'm not sure that legally we want to abolish the district. But with the word shall there, you're going to require that the district being abolished. So you could not follow the old system where a conservator comes in, runs the district for a few years, and then you go through this transition period. And that has worked fairly well in Aberdeen. And it was an odd situation, but I think there was a pretty good argument. The problem was the school board. The problem was that the school board administration and all had just not been performing well. But Aberdeen's a good community. They've got a downtown, they've got a federal court, they've got a bankruptcy court, they've got industry, they've got a lot going for them. They can run a school district. And the school did much better under this process. So what I'm trying to make sure of is, number one, is it okay, because this language is still there, is it okay to still have that as an option for the State Board of Education if that's what they feel the school board, the school district looks like? Or is the only option they're going to have the District of Innovation and Achievement School District? And B, in any event, do you, as a technical matter, abolish the school district or just abolish the school board?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think the language, let me start with the language in subsection 3, is the local school board being abolished, not the district being abolished. That's, and maybe and that may be you're referencing, you may mean the same thing, but there is a distinction between the two. Senator Bryan, I should have said this in the introduction. I'm not married to any particular language in this. This is a first shot or first attempt to try to put something in place to take care of a problem that I see as one of our most difficult challenges, toughest challenges in Mississippi is getting some of our really worst performing districts off the bottom, getting them to perform better. And by the way, I'll say there was a bill that came up in education the other day that may look at redoing the education grading system so it's not based on a curve. And I told Senator DeBar, the chairman, this before I brought up this bill, that I'm certainly amenable to looking at this in a different way or different light, and like if that bill goes forward, because it may be that we determine that every district in the state, nobody's a D or an F, and if that's the case, that's great, based on raw scores rather than based on curve that has been done. But I am certainly amenable to any kind of, if you think something works better, I don't want to complicate it any more than it has to be, but if there's two different systems that work, that's fine. I do think there's a distinction in the beginning of subsection 3 between the governor declaring the state of emergency or when the State Board of Education does this for academic and financial reasons. And obviously the academic reasons would be that they're just chronically underperforming. 4 years of D and F is a pretty good indicator that they're not meeting the standards they need to meet to educate their children well enough as a whole.
Senator Bryan?
Well, I think based on your comments and all, I think you and I want to get to the same place. My question was more a technical one about whether actually the district should be abolished. And B, I guess I'm in favor of giving the State Board of Education options. I'm not sure that we want to require them to do a certain thing. But the short answer is I've raised the question. I've already done more talking than I got to the point where I'm not sure I know what I'm talking about. So anyway, I just wanted to raise the issue.
Well,
And I'll comment too, if I may, Mr. Chairman. There's a reverse repeater in this because I anticipated this would need a lot of eyeballs on it and to help make this as good as it can be.
Senator Bryan, will you work with Senator Hobson before we bring this up on the floor? We'll get it where
If I have to.
you don't have to do anything. We can't make you do that.
Yes.
Any other questions for Senator Hobson? Senator Hobson?
Not motion. It's title sufficient to pass committee sub.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The last bill is Senate Bill 2691. This is a committee sub. It combines two statutes already in place, and it basically combines the categories of open enrollment. We have several categories of open enrollment. The first one being if you want to transfer to another school, we're talking public schools here only, that you currently have to get permission from the transferring, your sending school district and the receiving school district. What this does is it removes the veto power that the sending school district has. And so if you can transfer to any public school that you like, so long as you're responsible for your transportation, and things of that nature. So, and as long as the receiving school district accepts you as well. So it does provide exceptions for, this is on line 45 to 62, talks about removing that veto power the sending school district has. Parent or guardian has to provide the transportation. The transferee board, the receiving school district has to act within the next school board meeting of the request, or the request is denied. Lines 81 and 90, this deals with athletics, so you may want to listen close here. So it prevents a mid-year transfer of schools. So if a student plays football in the fall, you can't at Greene County, you can't transfer to Petal or Summerall to play baseball in the spring. Your athletic eligibility is determined by your fall enrollment. I believe currently that High School Athletic Association requires you to sit out a year if you transfer. This eliminates that prohibition. We don't want kids to be punished for transferring to the school that he or she wants to transfer to. The second circumstance is if you're a teacher in a school district and you live in Greene County, you want to teach in Jackson County. Currently, law is that the students of that teacher who now teaches in Jackson County but lives in Greene, his children can attend that school in Jackson County. That's the current law. We're not changing the law, but it may just look different in lines 91 to 120. Lines 121 to 157 basically says that if a student lives more than 30 miles away from his or her district, they may transfer to that district. They provide their own transportation. Like I said, that's currently in the law. If your lines 158 to 171 deal with municipal separate school districts, the same thing. You can transfer to that district as long as that receiving school district allows for it. You provide your own transportation. And the fifth circumstance is something that Senator Delano has brought up for several years, dealing with active duty military. That is in line 195. Basically, if you transfer in from out of state, that child of that active duty military parent can attend any school, public school that parent wants to enroll that child in. The committee sub is silent as to tuition fees and et cetera, because the current law is silent. And so we'll let each school district promulgate their rules and regulations going forward. I think some of the questions I've had is, what if a school district gets more applications or requests to transfer into that school district than they actually can sit? So what I recommend is that if a school district set early on the number of enrollees that can attend, allow the students that live in that district come first, then whatever's left over, figure out what students you want to accept from that point. But they're going to have to develop their own policies and procedures going forward of how they want to do that to avoid litigation and so forth that the district may incur if they don't accept a child that has a special needs and so forth. So those questions have come up, but it's kind of silent as to that. That way we can let the local school districts come up with their own policies, deal with their own school board attorneys, and then go from there. So that's an explanation, Senator Bryan.
Well, let's suppose you have a school district and I have a school district and they're fairly close to each other, look a lot alike. And for whatever reason, I might be able to get some students from your district to come to my district. And so I'm not going to take your difficult students. I'm going to take the cream of the crop. I'm going to take your football players. And so I get a few more. When I get a few more, the more of those good students, academically performing students, students who do what the teacher says, the more of them that come to my district, the more difficulty you're going to have running your district. And it sort of puts your district in a downward spiral. And then finally, when I've got all the students I want in my district, okay, well, I'm full. I don't want any more. And I leave you with a district that's smaller than it used to be. And I've removed from them the students that are the easiest to teach. What happens to the children that are left in your school district?
Well, I think that's a good question. And I think that's where it's important to have a good policy in place, because if you deny repeatedly those children that are difficult or special needs, and that's going to subject you to a lawsuit potentially. And so if you have a good policy where that is spelled out how you will accept students, it's vetted properly, and the school board follows that policy, then I think that you can then avoid the situation for the most part. I'm not going to say it's going to happen 100% of the time that you're referring to.
Well, maybe I could hire as a consultant somebody that works for insurance companies that does a pretty good way of figuring out a legal way not to renew policies for people they think are bad risk without violating the laws that say they can't do that.
Maybe so.
I mean, I'm not being flippant. I don't think you are either. I mean, I think what I've described is a real world problem, and I don't know what to do about
I've
it.
heard everything where if a school district just accepts only 5-star athletes, what are they going to do? You know, I think that's where we let the local districts decide what is best for them. And if they follow the rules and don't discriminate against someone or a group of people, then they'll be fine. But, you know, if they do, then they're putting themselves at risk.
I think not only will they be after the athletes, they'll be after the image, likeness, and name money that comes with them.
That may be possible. Thank you, Senator Bryant. Senator Hickman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of along the same lines as Senator Bryan. My question is, have we thought about the impact that this has on our small rural districts, and what's going to happen if, take a Noxubee County where I live, or a Kemper County where I serve, and you know, a Nana Warrior School District that's right there, that's already taking a lot of our students. What is this going to do to our rural school districts when they can no longer afford to be open? And what does that do to the people who can't afford to go over to a Nana Warrior or Louisville or these places?
Well, that's definitely a concern that we've discussed. That's not something we haven't just glossed over. But I think ultimately, you know, I come from a rural district, you know that, you know where I'm from. So in Greene County, it's definitely rural. So I'm concerned about that, but ultimately I think the parents' ability to decide where their child goes to school trumps, you know, and making sure a school district has enough children in their school district to function, is what if I get your question correctly.
But I think in that, in taking what you're saying, I still don't think this is the parent deciding, because the receiving school district still has to receive them. So the parent gets a want, but they don't get to ultimately make the decision.
So do I get what you're saying? We want to remove the receiving school district's veto power as well?
It's not, I'm
just
saying
saying,
I
I'm just asking.
vehemently disagree. And I think maybe that'll solve the issue, but I know that I come from a school district where even with this intact, we are dealing with people who have and are finding ways to usurp the system, and they have the money to buy property wherever. I mean, just a few years ago, our segregation at private school closed down, and we're just now seeing students of other races in our schools. So I think this further yields to de facto segregation systems in a lot of places. And I just don't think that doing this is good for education. And I think it has more implications on down the road. I think it implies that we're moving toward a system where parents' choice, and not only do they get to see where their children go to a public school, but they get to take their dollars wherever they want to go. And I think it's a slippery slope that we're going down. And particularly, all of that aside, I'm very concerned about our rural school districts and their ability to function.
Thank you, Senator Hickman. Any further? Senator Delano.
Mr. Chairman, I applaud you for this work that you've done on this bill. This is a good bill, and I hope that it goes through the process as we move through this. There is something that I would like for you to keep in mind, and I know that there's been some discussions about this, and I know Senator Bryant had addressed this as well. My school district in Biloxi is very fortunate that we have provided or have invested a lot of money in ELL classrooms as well as some SPED classrooms. So much so that we have many school districts who are receiving people that are moving into our communities that are recommending that those parents locate in Biloxi to partake in those particular services. And the city has the school district has a very high rate of SPED and ELL for the size of our community. That's something that they've been able to manage. But as we go through that process, Can you help our local school districts manage those types of needs in an appropriate way?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm
Okay.
not mirrored to the language in this bill, this committee sub. I want to make sure we protect our students as well as our school districts. And so whatever you and I can come up with to make that happen, improve it, I'm all for.
We are one of those rapid growing school districts that has had a program where they've allowed for people to come in on tuition. And it's been very successful and something that both our school district has received with open arms, but this is a concern that they've expressed with me regarding open enrollment. And I would just like to make sure we look at that. And I also want to tell you, thank you very much for including the information or the language in here for our military personnel who are coming into the state. That's very important. And I'm glad to see this bill continuing to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Leno. Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct? This bill is only for inter-district transfers, not intra-district. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
That's correct. You can
Just inter?
enter.
Second thing, Senator Hickman mentioned something about them, taking their money. MAP dollars will follow the student to
That's
the
correct.
district where they are.
Yes.
And would there, to your knowledge, would there be any prohibition from the receiving district to require the local for them to pay a pro rata share of their local taxes?
There's
Or
no prohibition of that.
this
in
doesn't
this.
speak to that, so they,
Basically, the current law on that would remain in place.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Norwood.
Mr. Chairman, as an athlete, I guess have we had any conversation with high school athletics to make sure that it's not, that there's no stacking of, are they gonna cooperate with the school district to make sure that their eligibility requirements are met?
Well, I could tell you that the association wanted the language where the student had to set out for a year in the committee sub. I just thought that was too big of a punishment for the student. If they didn't feel like they wanted to be at that school anymore, they should be allowed to transfer. So I took that recommendation and didn't follow it. That's why we have the language specifically that says they do not have to set out for that year. Now, if they aren't following that or are making some rulings contrary to that, then you need to bring that to our attention and we can maybe work on that if that were to happen.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Senator Wood. Title sufficient, do pass.
Well, I was just thinking about Noxubee County, and if they have a decline in enrollment in Noxubee County, maybe what could happen is they could be run by the schools in Starkville. And the Starkville school would, of course, maintain the Noxubee County school in its own identity, but it would just be a branch, as it were, of the school in Starkville.
Will you be the one in Noxubee County? You gonna run that for them as well?
I'm just trying to get in my how you.
I understand. Senator McClendon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your work on this. Our assessed value in DeSoto County is pretty high compared to a lot of the state. We're in the process of building one new high school at the present time to help alleviate the bulging of the walls with students. They're building the school also for the future growth that is coming. Believe it or not, we're getting bigger. So will DeSoto County have the option, or any county have the option of saying, no, this is for people that are moving here other than people that want to come use our school district? Because we've paid over the last 30 years bonds, extra ad valorem, and that kind of thing. So how do the tax, and these are all, like I said in committee, I've said it time and time again, how do we make those taxpayers whole with, and these are people that don't have children. All throughout these years have paid this, whether you have rental property, whether you have commercial property, whether you have residential property, whatever it might be. And I'm all for children's education being better. And we are proving that in DeSoto County. How do we do it?
So state your question for me.
My question is, we're building a school for future growth along with to alleviate being packed right now in the city of Hernando. Will we be required to take students?
No.
It will be up to the school board. They will never have the option of saying no.
The DeSoto School District has the authority to accept or reject any student that comes from outside the school district.
Will they be getting extra money for what the county taxpayers have paid?
The committee sub is silent to that, but I do know that currently, if a student were to transfer to another school district, there may be some type of pro rata share of ad valorem or whatever the school district charges. It's not tuition, but it's ad valorem, I believe, before that child attends there. That's current law.
Is there a limit on how far the student can come from?
No.
So basically, we could take all the students if we build enough schools in DeSoto County.
Well, DeSoto is a very good school district, and I understand why people want to come there. However, the authority to accept or reject remains with that school board.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator McClendon. Any further questions, comments, discussion? I'm sorry, did I hear somebody? You heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Oh, the ayes have it. That will be reported. Rise and report. If y'all could, hold on one second. For those of you on AET, you all would be meeting in room 210 now.